Well, when making a series of scene-by-scene analysis videos on Hamlet, uh, finding oneself in Act 4, Scene 2 is kind of like the old Wayne's World joke about Delaware. Oh, I'm in Act 4, Scene 2. Nothing much happens in it. It is the shortest scene in the play. The first thing it makes me think of actually is the how it's done in the 1996 Kenneth Branagh film of the play, where it's used as a jumping off point for an increasingly goofy chase scene that I always took to be a deliberate homage to the closing minutes of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Um, Textually, it, notable for containing what might be the best tongue twister in all of Shakespeare, a knavish speech, a knavish speech, a knavish speech sleeps in a foolish ear, spoken by Hamlet at line 22. An actor playing Hamlet live probably feels a great sense of relief when he gets past the part where he has to say that line. Um, but there are a couple of things we might notice about it. It's the only scene, except for some gentlemen who call from the other room at line 2, if we are to take those gentlemen as being other than Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It is the only scene in the play that solely features Hamlet and his two ill-fated high school friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So if we, as many people who are into arguing about, Hamlet's how good or bad, how much of a hero or an anti-hero or even a straight-up villain Hamlet is, his attitude toward and treatment of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are is something that needs to come up in that conversation. And so any part where he interacts with them, especially alone, as he does here, is important. He his attitude towards them in this scene is not something entirely new. It's more, that traditional 50-50 split of pretending to be crazy versus saying stuff that goes over their heads, the way that Hamlet had been talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and or to Polonius as far back as Act 2, Scene 2. To be demanded of a sponge, what replication should be made by the son of the king, he asks Rosencrantz at line 11. Rosencrantz, I guess, taking this as genuine inability to distinguish fantasy from reality, incredulously asks, "Take me for a sponge, my lord?" Hamlet then reveals this to be a metaphor, that he was setting him up, rather like he did to Guildenstern with all of the "will you play upon this pipe" business, setting him up for a pun and an insult, a metaphoric insult at the end of 3.2. Aye, sir, that soaks up the king's countenance, his rewards, his authorities, but such officers do the king best service. In the end, he keeps them like an ape, an apple in the corner of his jaw, first mouthed to be last swallowed. When he needs what you have gleaned, it is but squeezing you, and sponge you shall be dry again. In other words, don't trust Claudius. You think you're going to get rewarded by this guy, but he is untrustworthy. He is a bad king, only concerned for himself. And now this appraisal of Claudius is backed up by his totally self-centered reactions to hearing about Polonius's death in the also very brief, immediately previous scene. It had been so with us had we been there, and it will be laid to us, only caring about the odds that this could have happened to him, or that he's going to get blamed for it. So it's not so much that Hamlet's appraisal of Claudius's capacity for self-centeredness or for using people is off base here. It's more that should Rosencrantz and Guildenstern be any less wary of Hamlet himself than they are of Claudius? It is Hamlet who ends up being responsible for their eventual fate. So that long speech, the longest speech in this brief scene, from lines 15 through 20, functions rather similarly to something that Hamlet says to Polonius towards the end, right before everyone else exits and Hamlet is left on stage to do Rogue and Peasant Slave at the end of 2.2, when he tells when he excoriates Polonius for condescending to or judging the actors based on their low station in life. And treat every man after his desert, and who shall escape whipping? Treat them after your own honor and dignity, the less they deserve, the more merit is in thy bounty. It sounds very nice at the time, but we file away the fact that Hamlet said it to Polonius, and it then becomes ironic when Hamlet ends up accidentally, killing Polonius, and even more importantly, I think, being totally unconcerned with and unmoved by the fact that he did when he realizes that he has. So he makes this eloquent, merciful speech of treating people better than they deserve to the guy that he ends up treating worse than he deserves and not caring at all that he has, seeing it, in fact, as God's judgment on Polonius, of which he, Hamlet himself, was only the instrument. Heaven has seen fit to punish me with this and this with me, that I must be their scourge and minister. I'm doing God's work by stabbing this busybody. Similarly, this speech about watch out for that Claudius guy, he's just using you, he doesn't really care about you, that Hamlet makes to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will eventually become, we recognize it if it's our second time through the play or thereafter. If we know where this is headed, we recognize it as bitterly ironic, just as we do with that bit about mercy that he speaks to Polonius at the end of 2.2. My lord, you must tell us where the body is, they continue, and go with us to the king. Hamlet responds, the body is with the king, but the king is not with the body. The king is a thing. Now, this is more of that, those pregnant responses, right? The mad speech that appears meaningless at first, but the more you dilate upon it, is delivered of a meaning. Now, he might very well have a different king than the current one in mind here when he talks about the body is with the king, but the king is not with the body. The previous king, his own father, is, of course, literally not with the body. He is a ghost, a spirit divorced from the body. So more of those body and soul Aristotelian divisions that Hamlet was using as fodder for insults to his mom back in 3.4, coming up again here. The king is a thing of nothing, bring me to him. And the closing lines, hide fox and all after, which was the Renaissance equivalent of something like, Ollie Oxenfree or something. Children yell during a game of a tag. It is an indication that perhaps this is supposed to turn into some sort of chase scene. In these videos, of course, we are concerned only with the text, and that's all the text we have for Act 4, Scene 2. See you in Act 4, Scene 3.